Coach Massi here from Massi-Machado Strength and Conditioning, M2 Speed, Strength and Performance, and this is another episode of Move Your Feet. Welcome. So we recently did a webinar with Perform Better, and as we were logging off, we noticed there were more questions coming in, and we do apologize that we couldn't address them at that time. We were a little time barred. But for today and probably the next episode, we're going to try to revisit a few components and elements we introduced during that webinar that seemed to elicit a lot of questions. So today, we're going to take a look at one of the objective measures, you might want to call it. The name of the webinar was Create to Compete, and we actually had Coach Matt, demonstrate this. So Coach Matt, come on around. So we're calling Coach Matt in today because we're actually going to demonstrate that internal, external rotation of the hip, objective measure, or objective test that we use. Now, quite honestly, there are a gazillion super competent people within the mobility and objective testing space. That's not our wheelhouse in the sense that we're not going to spend a lot of time going over the objective testing for mobility per se. However, in our methodology, mobility is hugely important, and it's really a foundational component that we look to develop and maintain. So we have a few different ways that we do our objective testing for SI, hip joint mobility, internal and external rotation. And we know that one of the methods that we introduced elicited a lot of questions at the end. I think we kind of missed them as we were logging off, so we did want to address them. So simple stuff here today. As you'll see behind Matt, there is just a cross, some tape across. We use some tape on our turf. You could also do this on rubber flooring or any type of flooring, but you're going to need at least that cross, that X, to conduct this test. And it's a simple internal, external rotation of the hip test that we've come to grow and like around here. The grid board behind is gravy, or icing on a cake. Kind of a necessity when you want to start looking at any anterior tilt of the torso, but also to get a really good perspective of alignment against that grid wall. Some people draw grid walls, some people buy these Align-A-Bods from Perform Better. Either way, you now basically have set the stage to take this internal, external rotation of the hip test that we've began to utilize. And it's been pretty successful as far as it's easy for the older clients to also take. And it's not one of these tests that you have to get in there and kind of help them move their hip. This is one that is either going to go or it's not. So Matt, why don't we assume the position? So Matt's going to start by facing the camera. He's going to put his left knee down. And we like to assume that the person is going to need to utilize some sort of stick. And what the stick does is it's going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to provide you with a vertical perspective versus the grid wall. Number two, because this is the most flexible tsunami bar that there is out there, it'll show you if they're relying on this bar and if they really flex it while they're trying to conduct this. So Matt, just hold that for a minute. You could also use a regular pipe or a stick, but we seem to like this because it gives you a nice perspective, and you see if Matt kind of pulls on this or twists it, you're going to see side to side whether or not he's really utilizing that to stabilize his body during this test. So he's left knee down. Obviously, we go left knee, right knee. Let the person position themselves reasonably in the sense that we're trying to get 90 degrees on the flexion so we have a good baseline marking, and we try to recreate the metrics of this test over and over again. And for as long as I've been doing this, I'm going to be honest with you, I always have to take a split second to say, internal versus external rotation of the hip, depending upon what aspect and sphere we're in. So Matt, internal is going to be when you take your foot out that way. So you see he just turned his foot out. Now don't move. There's a couple of ways to run this test. The first way is he just went and he didn't try to inch his way out. If it's rubber, use a piece of chalk to mark it. In this instance, you can get a piece of tape and you can say, okay, so there's his first mark, and I'm going to measure his toe marking, where his toe came to. We also prefer to do this barefooted. Matt, go back to the center line. So you're going to help him adjust that center line. And then this time you can tell him you can walk it out. So he's going to try to get out as far as he can by walking it. And stop. So your first mark is going to be where his toe was in one movement. The second mark would be where his toe is on multiple movements. Go back to the beginning. Ideally, we're looking for where they can position their foot and how they can rotate that hip with one movement. So now, Matt, as drastically as you can without falling over, one movement, try to move that foot out as far away from your body line as you can. Okay, good. So here's what I want you to notice. Don't move. You can't see it, but I can from here. And when we turn him, you'll see it. He's leaned forward significantly. He has some anterior tilt. Now go backwards. Now, conversely, simple. To look at the external rotation of the hip, now Matt, you're going to go the opposite way. Now you're going to see this move, come on in. And obviously that's going to move a heck of a lot better generally in people. And then you also on this one, use the same metric. You can find the big toe easily, mark the big toe, and you can start to build your metric. Now, if you have multiple people that you're testing, obviously you can use the tape. You can just put their initials on it so you don't have to keep clearing the tape, and you can take a photo of that later. Okay, fix that foot. Okay, so now we're going to turn him the opposite way. So why don't we stand up? We're going to go left knee, and you're going to face the dumbbells so they can see the inside. So what we like to do when we're done with testing, we keep our marks on the ground, and we just take a bird's eye shot of it to support our actual text metric, and we just pair them together into a file folder in our data bank, and it makes things really easy to continually refer to it. Now, Matt, let's just go with this single swing, internal rotation of the hip. So boom, boom. That's as far as he gets. Now you'll see he's leaning a little bit. So let's go completely erect, completely vertical, and I'm going to get away from the grid wall. So now you guys maintain perspective here and see what happens. Go ahead, Matt. Okay, he fought it there. He stood tall. Matt, show him what it would look like if you had to bend a little bit. Yeah, obviously you would see that happen. You would see some reliance on the stick. So go back to the beginning there, and let's go with the external. And he's just going to pull it in. Boom, bang. Make your mark. Look at your perspective here. How much does that line change? How much is he relying on the stick? Now, also, I'm going to take the stick away now. You can do it without the stick. You can do it without the bar, without the pole. Good, Matt. Okay, good. Opposite. Now, with this, some people elect to also go hands behind the head. Let's go. Some people like to elect for this because you're going to get that straight shot perspective down onto the grid wall, and you also see this turn more readily than maybe if they're down here. This will give you perspective on his scaps and his engagement. But stand tall. Now give it a shot. Internal, go ahead, opposite way. External. Boom. Listen. Good, Matt. It's a very simplistic test. I might be 1,000% wrong, but in my opinion, I like it because it's so easy to just keep set up that while you're taking somebody through their progression and their developmental journey, you can just throw them back down, boom, do it every few weeks, every mesocycle, whatever, however you guys work, and continue to have this objective comparable measure. So one of the ways we progress this a bit is we call it goalies, and we talked about this during the webinar. This is just changing the aspect. We're now getting them up off the ground, and now it's going to require some strength and balance, and certainly the mobility that's required. And we call it the goalies because it reminds us of a warm-up that a hockey goalie would do. And ideally, you want to see the person performing the movement, you know, squat right here and not move and just drop their hip down in. Yeah, I'm not there anymore. I don't know if I ever really was there. And Matt being a Massi, he's got pretty mobile hips, but not like some of our other clients. So you're just going to tell him, squat, boom. Now try to just drop that knee right down your vertical line. Now you'll also notice, right, so his torso's turning a bit with him, right? He's got a little bit of rotation. So now I can tell him, stand a little taller. Now sit a little bit, get a little more quad engagement, a little more glute engagement now. Boom, and now just drop that knee. You just want to see that knee drop down the center line. Okay, now turn sideways. Show them what it looks like sideways. So hands up behind the head, and here's where you get that good sagittal aspect. Go ahead, get prepped. Now people will say, well, what is the actual measurable over here? And the simple answer is, you're gonna find out how many inches this is. Okay, so you can stand here if you want with a tape measure, or you can simply say, okay, this is a bucket. We have buckets around here. This is a bucket. Make sure you're in light touch contact with the bucket, or an old medicine ball, whatever it may be. If you're going to be a stickler to that, that's good, because that's part of recreating an objective measure. Also, we have grid ball now. Okay, sit back down, Matt. Look for hip crease. Also, what we like to do, and sometimes when we do some motion capture work, it's like the, how do I say this? I don't want to say it's the poor man's version, but it's the cost-effective version of maybe green screen. And what we'll do is we'll put a mark. I'll find his hip joint measure, boom, like that. All right, go down. I just lost it. That's okay. There. I'm going to get a big piece here. But go down, get in your position. Okay. So if I want to have a perspective, if I'm videoing it, or I want to mark against that grid line that's at, I don't know, 1 foot 10 inches, at least you have a perspective. Matt, conduct the goalies. And now you see where that rotation occurs, how his chest breaches those lines. Listen, this is food for thought. We might be wrong. We like it. We like it because it's also kind of challenging. It's fun. It gets super competitive because we have some females that can literally get all the way back against the grid wall and be like pinned straight, and they're just dropping that knee straight down, and it's quite amazing. So, try to put this test into action. Thanks, Matt. And use it. It's fun. It's competitive. It's actually, it's very data-driven also, because you start to get your metrics together. You have the grid wall to use comparatively with the brown markings. Don't forget, take your text data or your text data, then take a picture from a bird's eye view. Always remember to use your markings, date, and the participant on a little piece of tape, or if you're on rubber, date and the participant with your chalk. Take your picture, you're good to go. You can do this anywhere, which is also awesome. But I just wanted to thank you for tuning back in, and we are going to use a couple of these episodes to cover some of the content that we didn't necessarily get to during the webinar. So until next time, this is Coach Massi from M2 Speed, Strength, and Performance, telling you greatness is forged, not fabricated, and that's your day.